Story 1. She helped me take care of my dying grandmother in hospice. No questions asked. My grandmother was the only good person in my life. She raised me and meant so much to me. After I got off the phone with the hospital social worker, I said, "Hey, this will be rough. If you want to leave during this, I understand. But I need to be there for Grandma." She replied, "No, your grandmother is my family too. I'm here for you. I'm here for her. I'm not going anywhere." When my grandmother died, I went into a state of psychosis. My wife held her hand as she passed away. My grandmother loved her almost more than me. My wife pried me from my grandmother's body while I thrashed and screamed and wailed like a baby. She held me down and comforted me. I don't remember what was said or done, but she was always there during the hardest times. She is beautiful, kind, and grand. I will never be able to repay her amazing selflessness, nor will I ever repay her unconditional love. She is too great for this world. I adore her. I will spend the rest of my life with her, and more lives if that is possible. I proposed to her within the year. We have always been so in love. I never believed in soulmates until I found her. Now we are married and have a son who adores her, and I adore her. I adore our son. Rest in peace, Grandma. We will miss you forever. I really wish my grandmother could see what an amazing wife and mother she is, but she wouldn't be surprised. Every day feels like a dream. Even during hard times, she is a ray of sunlight in my life. She is a serious woman, but she is genuine. Her actions speak so loudly. She is strong and intelligent. Every day I wonder what I have done to deserve a woman like her. Every day I wake up, look at her, and feel so at home. She says I'm sappy and sentimental, but she likes it. I enjoy how honest and serious she can be. I feel like we complement each other, or at least I hope so. I love my wife. Story 2. The first time I saw her, I didn't think, "Who is that?" I thought, "What is that?" She was something different. Everything felt different with her. It was so comfortable. The most mundane tasks became the best date nights ever. Within the first few weeks, we went grocery shopping together because we were going to cook dinner. I followed her around with the cart, thinking, "This is nice. I could do this for the rest of my life." I remember watching her hands as she picked up bottles of wine, squeezed avocados, and brushed against the flowers when we walked by them. I was captivated by the way she moved that night. Then, in the middle of it all, Mariah Carey's Fantasy started playing in the store. She had her back to me, then spun on her heel with a bottle in her hand, lip-syncing and dancing. People were looking, and she just didn't care. She was so present, happy, and alive. I felt like she woke me up from a long sleep and reintroduced me to life. She was so full of life. There were so many moments that made me fall in love with her. But it was somewhere around the bridge of fantasy, where she pointed at me and sang, "I'm in heaven with my boyfriend, my laughing boyfriend," that I knew I never wanted to be apart from her. Story 3. We were eating on campus with a group of friends when she casually took a tin of Old Bay out of her bag and sprinkled a little on her fries. "Do you always carry Old Bay with you?" I asked. "No, not always," she replied, giving me half her attention before turning to someone else. And that was it. Story 4. I asked my husband, and he said, "She was the first person I felt I could truly be myself with and didn't feel like dating her was a game." Story 5. During our first times together, we were intimate each time, without any hesitation. We didn't think much of it because our attraction was growing stronger. Then, during a weekend getaway, there was a day when everything felt like I had known this girl my entire life. When we returned to the hotel, we took a shower, got naked, and watched television until we fell asleep holding hands. When I woke up the next morning, I realized I could be myself around her, and she could be herself around me. Everything from the previous day felt natural, and nothing felt forced. From the moment I told her at breakfast, our relationship transitioned into a long-term commitment, where it was not a question of if, but when a ring would be on her finger. Story 6. We went from being acquaintances to friends, and after a few months we became really good friends, getting to know each other like friends do. We knew pretty much everything the other liked and disliked, sharing many of those same preferences, which was kind of surprising. While I was married when we initially met, I was separated shortly after due to my ex cheating, and she was in an abusive marriage. Neither of us knew anything beyond our marriages because we didn't have anything more than that friendship. She was out of my league, so I wasn't pushing for more. We talked about cars, architecture, vacation spots, and more. It was some time before she knew I was single, and I didn't find out she had left her husband until later. Eventually, she asked me out on a date, and by that time we knew each other very well. We had been friends for nearly a year before she asked me out. Once we got together, it took no time for me to realize she was the one because I already knew her as a person, not just as a girlfriend. I apologize for the long story, but it needed to be told to explain everything. Story 7. Firstly, there is the honeymoon period where everyone seems great. Then, it really depends on whether you believe in the concept of the one. Anyone can be the one, as long as you connect. Once you enter a long-term relationship, it comes down to whether you are willing to work through disagreements and problems or call it a day. Story 8. I have been in a relationship for 1.5 years, but I plan to propose at the 3-year mark if things continue this way. She is the first woman I can completely be myself around. She is receptive and supportive when I talk about my emotions or insecurities, and it would never occur to her to use that against me. She can also reflect on her own feelings and insecurities and discuss them with me in a healthy manner. She does not play mind games, takes responsibility for her actions, and apologizes when necessary. We have a similar libido. She is kind and non-judgmental. We have a similar need for non-sexual physical touch. She is ambitious. We share a similar balance of extroversion and introversion. We enjoy spending time with friends but also appreciate relaxing together. She is fun to be around. She likes my friends and I like hers. She likes me. Whenever I have a bit to drink, I can't help but express how much I love her and how I have never met anyone like her. Story 9. We had a pregnancy scare after dating for just a month or two. Both of us are really close with our parents, and we hadn't even told them about each other yet. As we sat there thinking, this could be real. Instead of panicking, we made fun of all the names until we found one that neither of us could easily mock. It turned out to be a false alarm, but it showed me she isn't someone who will freak out or panic, especially about things we can't control. We would need to find a place and baby furniture, but that's not something we can do immediately when it might not even happen. What we can do is laugh at the situation. Story 10. I could just tell we got along great. She was funny, charming, kind, and it just felt right. I told her I loved her after a week. She said it was too early. 3 years later, we were married. 18 years later, we are still married and happier than ever. I remind her every so often that I was right and she was wrong, and one of these days she is bound to be wrong again. Story 11. She made an effort. When I met my wife, I was talking to and dating 2 other women, both of whom I had known for a few months. The other women liked free dates and attention but did not do anything nice for me at all. It felt like I was putting in effort to show my interest and build a relationship, while they did not feel obligated to show any interest in me. Shortly after meeting my wife, she found out that I had to work most holidays. A couple of weeks later, I had to go into work on Memorial Day. My wife was off and had grilled. She made me a plate of food and drove roughly 45 minutes to bring it to me when I got home from work. I did not think I knew then that we would get married, but I did know that she needed to be the person I wanted to focus my attention and energy on and pursue. Story 12. She isn't my wife yet, but we've talked about it. I've got the ring for her. We knew each other a decade ago, went to technical college together, and then went our separate ways. When we reconnected, I felt like I didn't need to hide myself. I could open up and share the love I have for her, and she received it in return. I moved in after a week. We said we loved each other after 2 weeks and have not looked back. A good friend said after a breakup that you'll know the right one when you can give love freely, and she receives it and reciprocates. It isn't forced or awkward. It just works. Story 13. I knew I was going to marry my wife on the first date, which was a blind date. When I got home after dropping her off, I couldn't stop smiling. I then thought, oh no, because I wasn't looking for anything serious, but I knew that was what it would be. I could not bear to be away from her after dropping her off for the first time. Story 14. When I first met my wife, I was in a period of my life when I began accepting that I was going to be single for the rest of my life. I had been in and out of serious relationships for nearly 20 years, each one feeling more difficult than the last. I was exhausted. Then my wife looked at me for the first time, and there was more intimacy in that eye contact than I had ever experienced. I was starstruck. I'm still starstruck. That dynamic hasn't changed. She still looks at me like that every time. During our first conversation, we were two giggly dorks who made it incredibly obvious to the entire room that we were into each other. We still act like that every single day, even when the pandemic hit and we lost our jobs, and even when we were sleep-deprived with a screaming baby. That foundation was always there, and those difficult times were full of infinitely more joy than when I was a carefree hedonist living without a care in the world. For one of our first dates, we sat on my couch, drank water, and talked. We were going to go out, but the next thing we knew, it was almost midnight. We had forgotten that anything existed outside of each other being together in the moment. That night set the tone. No matter how hard I work, it never feels like work because I know it isn't mandatory. The reward is always there and is infinitely greater. We started dating in December, and by March, I told my mom that she was the one. Story 15. It wasn't like a spark or a sudden realization. I think a comparison would be like asking, how do you know your arm is yours? Being with her felt so natural. I don't know if that's clear or not, but that was my experience. Story 16. I'm going to change my approach on this one. My wife and I dated for almost 5 years before I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. I wasn't really sure about our relationship for most of those 5 years, but things were good. She made me happy, we loved each other. But there were some things I just didn't know if I could live with or without. I vividly remember the moment I realized I was being foolish and that this was the perfect woman for me. It all clicked. Nothing special had happened. We were just driving and having a great time. It was the realization that for the last 5 years I had been truly happy that made me go searching for a ring. The two key things I've learned are that you need to know who you are and what is truly important to you. That way, you know if that other person fits with your values and priorities. Realistically, you're looking for an 80%. Anything more is extra. Just as importantly, the relationship has to be healthy. Story 17. There was no single event that I could identify, but I knew within days. We met on a blind date as a result of a classified advertisement, long before the internet and dating apps existed, so we had no prior knowledge of each other. In the first week, we couldn't stop talking and spent every available moment together. There was just something that clicked. Suddenly, she went from being a nobody to being everything to me. Within 7 days of meeting, we moved in together. 35 years later, we are married with a growing family of grandchildren. Story 18. It was really a whole series of events, particularly leading up to and through our second date. We met online when OkCupid was still decent, and in my first message to her, I noted that her profile had lots of words but didn't provide much information. In her response, she agreed, which established an instant comfort with going meta, rare in my extensive dating experience. Before our first date, she texted saying she'd be a few minutes late. Instant bonus points. I had experienced many previous dates arriving late without warning or not showing up at all. I texted back, expressing my appreciation for her consideration and offered to have a drink waiting when she arrived, which she appreciated in return. She looked like her pictures. That was a big relief. I found her very attractive and smiled widely while watching her walk to our table. Most of our first date, which was dinner, felt more like a debate. We somehow got onto the topic of morality. Sam Harris had released a book recently that everyone was discussing, and we debated objective versus subjective. It was lighthearted yet challenging and very intellectually stimulating, far better than the typical small talk I dislike. After our first date ended, we just hugged in the parking lot. I texted her on the way home, saying I really wanted to kiss her, but had a rule about not kissing on the first date. She replied immediately, saying she wanted to but understood and respected my rule. She mentioned she really enjoyed the date and was excited to meet again. She actually communicated openly and actively, which is quite rare. We flirted quite a bit over text until our second date. There was no ghosting, no long delays between messages, none of that nonsense. When we met up for our second date, we both arrived at the same time from different directions, and she immediately leapt into my arms and kissed me. With a big smile on her face, she said, "Figured I'd just get it over with." I think that was the moment I truly allowed myself to believe it fully. She was beautiful, intelligent, kind, and as into me as I was into her. There were no games, we just clicked. We'll be married for 9 years in January. Story 19. Because of love, I briefly broke up with her, thinking we were too young for a serious relationship. That only lasted a few months. I remember thinking I would marry her after about 5 weeks together. It completely and fundamentally changed me and my perceptions of the world. To be loved and accepted for all my flaws and faults is a profound experience. Her love is like the sun, and I want to be near it for eternity. We are an exception. Neither of us had partners before each other, and we were both inexperienced in relationships. Very rare these days. That isn't to say there weren't tough times and a lot of work in our marriage, but 22 years later, she is lying next to me, and I'm still struggling to keep my hands off her. I'm so attracted to her. I feel incredibly blessed. Story 20. If you saw her, you'd hope and pray she was your one too. I hope she actually is mine. Story 21. It was a combination of feeling right and deciding that she would be the one. It is not merely a passive occurrence. Story 22. Months? Rookies. For us, it was 7 weeks from our first meeting to being engaged. No, nobody was pregnant. It clicked beyond description from the first time we spoke. I saw her walk into a party, and something in my brain just said, "Go talk to her." Now, 30 years later, we are still going strong. Story 23. The idea is silly. There is no one. There is the one you choose that chooses you back. Incidentally, my wife and I played an open mic night when we were dating. She made me a bunch of guitar picks that had a picture of us on them and said, "I pick you, you pick me." It was very touching to me. Things have been hard at times, but we're doing well and our communication is good. I love her very much and don't know what would have become of me if she hadn't helped me get my life together. I'm a lucky guy. Story 24. I want to share the story of how my now wife and I met and got married. Her father worked for my father long ago when we were still babies. Over time, life happened, and her family moved about 5 hours away, causing us to lose contact, aside from occasional visits every few years. Fast forward around 20 years. I was in my mid-20s and had just gotten my first official girlfriend, who dumped me after 2 weeks. That breakup is what got my wife and me talking, as she saw my Facebook status change to single. At this point, we hadn't spoken to each other in about 20 years. Our conversations began with "sorry you broke up" and other small talk. After a couple of weeks, our conversations turned into talking on Facebook and FaceTime for 3 to 6 hours a night. It was at this point that she told me if we ever wanted to be friends, I needed to talk to her father first. Not to get permission, but to seek his blessing, I guess. Keep in mind, we were now living about an hour apart, so it was time for a Sunday afternoon road trip. After speaking with her father for a while, he gave us the green light, and I had a new girlfriend. By this time, we had been talking for about 2 weeks and were communicating almost every day for several hours. I was also driving up to her parents' house to spend the weekends together. Separate bedrooms, though. After dating for about 3 weeks, 5 weeks since we started talking, I nearly flipped my truck driving home one night. Luckily, I managed not to flip it, but it was that oh no moment when I realized my wife was the woman for me. The next day, I wrote her parents a long letter expressing my love for their daughter and my desire to marry her. I emailed it to them. The following Friday, I drove up to her parents' house to ask for their permission to marry their daughter. I will never forget what her mother said. She looked at her husband, my wife's father, with a confused expression and asked, "Is that what that letter was about?" After letting me sweat for what felt like an hour, which was only a couple of seconds, they both started laughing at me. We talked for a while before they said they were giving me their blessing to marry their daughter. At that time, my wife was at work at a local coffee shop. When she finished work, I surprised her with a big bouquet of roses. As we drove her home, I told her to change into something nice because I was taking her out for dinner. Her parents were in on my plan. We went to a nice steakhouse for dinner, where I carried in a bag but wouldn't disclose its contents. We had an amazing steak dinner, though I cannot remember anything from the meal. After dinner, I asked her if she wanted to see what was in the bag. She was very curious and eager to solve the mystery. I used this as an opportunity to get down on the floor, though I wasn't on my knee yet. I reached into the bag and pulled out a small stuffed monkey. I began to explain how this monkey held a secret, as only it knew just how much I loved her and how amazing she was. As I said this, I slowly got down on one knee. I then opened the small Velcro pouch on its back where I had stashed the ring box. As I reached in and wiggled the box out, I accidentally hit the test button for the stuffed monkey's voice box. Right then and there, in that expensive restaurant, it blared, "Oh ah," at maximum volume. I wanted to die. The entire restaurant turned to look at the weirdo with the monkey toy, and I hated being the center of attention. In short, she said yes, and we got married. We now have 2 kids, ages 10 and almost 12, and have been married for almost 13 and a half years. I want to finish this long post with a quick breakdown of our timeline. Week 0, started talking on Facebook. Week 2, asked her father for permission to date her. Week 5, had an almost accident in my truck and realized I wanted to marry her. Week 6, asked her parents for permission to marry their daughter, then asked her. Week 28, 6.5 months from day 1, we got married. Story 25. She is the female version of me. We are best friends. There was no honeymoon period. We were facing challenges from the start, but we worked well as a team. Now, after 2 years, the honeymoon period is beginning. I am confident this is a good sign for our relationship. She truly cares about me. She buys me car parts and video games. If she sees that I am feeling down, she encourages me by saying, "Go and play something on your Game Boy. Have fun." Story 26. Honestly, I don't know. It's just a feeling I had one day when I woke up next to her. And I thought, my God, that's the woman I want to marry and spend the rest of my life with. Story 27. She threw up all over me, the floor, the couch, and several other items, and I was okay with it. That was about 28 years ago, and we are still supporting each other. When I stopped to think about it, I was more concerned about her than about my belongings. Story 28. She allowed me to be an emotional being. I felt safe. She saw my willingness to be exposed as a strength, not a weakness. Story 29. I got engaged 4 months after meeting my wife. I vividly remember within the first week that I couldn't go through life knowing she was out and I wasn't with her. Everything she ever said about herself seemed impossibly cool. She was such a force and had a unique perspective on everything. During the first week, I was nervous and scared to talk, and for superstitious reasons, I started taking a gram of testosterone every week just to keep myself feeling like I belonged. I was surprised that she was interested in me, even though my ego was usually high. She had great stories, was incredibly attractive, and spoke with an energetic confidence that I really liked. She was successful and exuded a level of self-assurance that drew me in. Most importantly, she was genuinely respectful and engaged with what I talked about. She took things seriously and wasn't dogmatic. I truly wanted to be with her forever. I married her 7 months after we met. Until now, I thought it was 8, but it's 7. We're approaching 3 years now, and it's going better than ever. I don't think I did much to earn her affection. During the first month, I was almost too nervous to talk. Fortunately, I was the most muscular guy she had ever dated, and she really liked that. Story 30. This is a simple answer but difficult to understand. She was different, felt different. From the moment we met, my instincts that were previously focused on short-term happiness suddenly shifted to the rest of my life. My sensitivity to her feelings was greater than anyone before her. My urge to protect her was unlike anything I had ever felt. The fact that we were opposites on most things didn't matter to either of us. We could just talk. Things felt easy and natural with her. We said, "I love you," after 16 days. I proposed after 3 months, and we got married 6 months later. 22 years later, we're married and have become best friends. Marriage can be hard. Don't get it twisted. But not for a moment have I ever doubted she's the one. Story 31. I have only been in a relationship for a few months now, but I feel like I have met the one. I think there are many different things about her that make her special. She drives me crazy, and I find her incredibly beautiful. I usually don't find anyone attractive, but she is different. My heart melts every time I see her smile. She also makes me feel at ease. It felt like we quickly could talk about serious topics, and we made each other laugh early on while teasing one another. I felt like she would get along with my closest friends and family. We overlapped in university, so we understood each other in that way, but it felt like we had known each other for years. We became instantly comfortable with each other. I love talking with her, and every minute we spend together feels good. I feel like we share similar values, but also have differences that make life interesting. I am relaxed, but I want to plan everything, and I like routines and predictability. She is spontaneous and often makes suggestions for things to do. Frequently, we end up doing things we hadn't planned. One weekend, we spent practically 2 days in bed together, talking, cuddling, and enjoying each other's company. Just 5 minutes after I had to leave, I was already missing her. Story 32. Chemistry was fantastic. I had a list of must-haves for my future wife. Very smart, loving, a fun personality that made me laugh, very appealing to me, similar long-term financial and career goals, a desire to be married, and a wish to have children. She was everything I wanted, except she initially didn't want kids as she was focused on her career. I told her I loved her after 6 weeks because I knew she was the one. I waited almost 2 years to propose until she agreed to have children. She loved me and understood how important it was to me, and she became a fantastic mother. If you truly know what you want, you will recognize it when you find it. Story 33. I knew the first time I saw her. I'm not kidding. At that time, I was a professional touring musician, and I vividly remember our first meeting even after 20 years. Long story short, I asked her out and was incredibly nervous on our first date. As a touring musician, nervousness usually isn't an issue for me, but I talked too fast and made a fool of myself. Something just clicked differently with her, and we spent almost every day of our lives together since then. Story 34. When we cooked at her apartment in the first weeks, I noticed that when I arrived and closed the door behind me, everything else stayed outside. It was just us, so naturally I felt confident to just be myself. She seemed so relaxed and mature, 3 years younger than I am, but so much more settled. She was the one who accidentally slipped "I love you" during an argument. I was prepared for awkward stumbling, but she just looked me in the eyes, exhaled, stepped towards me, and kissed me. I learned she meant no games. When she says something, she means it, and I'm all in. A few years down the road, the universe wanted me to forget any doubts. Exactly 4 days after I bought a ring, very unexpectedly, my mother died. The amount of support I received from her, and the time and effort she spent helping me feel better and process this grief, was key to my survival in that moment. I will never let her go. Story 35. My mom pointed out how much more I had been smiling. Admittedly, our relationship was somewhat of a cheat mode since we knew each other in high school but didn't get together until after undergraduate studies. This allowed us to speed through some of the getting to know you stage. Still, I knew we would get married by 2 to 3 months in. Story 36. She was the first person with whom I truly felt I could be myself. Beautiful, kind, smart, and empathetic, we shared similar values and came from similar families, yet we were just different enough to keep things interesting. She was incredibly supportive of my ambitions, and I supported hers. I knew she was the one within 3 months and wanted to ask her to marry me within 5 months, but I forced myself to wait for 9 months. That was nearly 30 years ago, and it's still wonderful. Story 37. We talked a lot and had deep discussions very early on. Comes down to communication. When both parties are willing to be vulnerable and open communicators, relationships are easy. We met in the spring of 2014 and were engaged by Christmas. We are about to celebrate our 9th anniversary, and we have 4 children. I could not have dreamed of a better woman. Story 38. I never got married, and I'm not sure it will ever happen at this point. However, my pre-pandemic ex is the one that got away. From the moment we met, everything in the universe felt right. We were inseparable for the next year and a half that we dated until a job change took her to another state. Weeks after that first meeting, I stood in my kitchen thinking about her, trying to describe her to my friend. Yes, she's pretty, but it isn't just her looks. She's smart, but it isn't just her intelligence. She's sweet, but it isn't just her kindness. And then I understood. She feels like home. When I'm with her, I feel like I'm home. I knew she was the one in that moment. Story 39. Not a man, sorry, but I know that for my husband it was our first argument, which was entirely civil and ended on an agree to disagree note. He was used to his ex, who would scream at him until she got her way. Sometimes I think that I'm very fortunate to have been the first one to meet him after he broke up with her because I realize now that the bar was set very low. Story 40. Youthful confidence. I thought that about a few different women, and I happened to be right this time. Story 41. It felt different, and it is hard to explain that. It was not like I felt more love or intense emotions as in prior honeymoon phases. Instead, I felt a deep sureness in her. I felt I could trust her with my life from day one. She seemed to be everything I was missing in my life. She had qualities I did not possess and flaws in which I was strong. She was the most beautiful person I had ever seen. She was kind and funny, and she could talk for hours, which I did not mind. As I mentioned, it is just this overwhelming feeling of trust in them. It is an immediate and deep sense that you can trust them with your heart. Story 42. We never had that intense lovesick feeling. We were just immediately comfortable, like 2 really old friends reunited. A few months after we met, it was really icy, and she slid off the road. She called me crying, saying she got into a car accident. She was fine, the car was fine, and a kind passing motorist pulled her car out before I even managed to get to her. But that initial, I just crashed, through her sobs over the phone sent my heart right to the bottom of my stomach. I realized I couldn't imagine life without her. Story 43. I sent her a message and said, I haven't heard from you in a while. How have you been? She replied, I was kind of hoping something might happen between us, and when it didn't, I was disappointed and didn't want to message you back. I replied, can we go out this Friday? She said yes, and we've been married for 15 years in June. She's the most amazing person I've ever known, and I'm so fortunate she said that to me. I needed it. Story 44. My first wife passed away a little over a year ago. I then dated someone who was abusive for a few months because I didn't know any better after being with the same person for over 13 years. My second wife was the first person not to treat me poorly on a date, and she did not regard my late wife as an ex. There is a significant difference between a deceased spouse and an ex. She asked questions that no one else had asked on a date, which made me realize her personality was more caring and compassionate than the other women I had been talking to, who were all in their late 30s. Her approach to the date was simply to learn as much as we could about each other over a meal, rather than playing games or lying to impress one another. It was probably the only first date where I felt at ease, and everything just felt right. Story 45. I married my first girlfriend, so I really have no experience with others. We were friends before becoming a couple and did not have a honeymoon phase. Our love developed slowly and steadily. Soon after our first kiss, she started asking questions like where I wanted to live and how many children I would like to have. I was very impressed that she was thinking seriously about our future. Later, she gave me many reasons to assure me that she was the right choice. Story 46. Reading all your stories evokes deep emotions and reminds me of my ex, whom I loved very much. To summarize, she came from an affluent family, and her younger sister was one of my closest friends. I never spoke to her during my 5 years of undergraduate studies, only connecting in the last year, and I fell for her quickly and deeply. One particular incident I vividly remember was when I was returning to the hospital from lunch. I saw a picture of her receiving an award displayed on a large screen in the hospital lobby, and I thought to myself, wow, some of the happiest moments of my life were when we were together. Ultimately, she decided she could do better than me because we were not of the same social standing. Associating with me would be seen as taboo and shameful to her family, so she left me blindsided and plunged into despair. It still stings, you know. I love this girl. Story 47. I had many relationships before her, and I don't want to brag about them. However, none lasted more than a few days. I just couldn't stand talking to any of them until I met her. When she entered the apartment, I was stunned and couldn't take my eyes off her. It was a feeling I had experienced before, but this time felt different. I couldn't bear to be apart from her. I wanted to talk to her nonstop. We also enjoyed an active physical relationship, of course. Every morning when we woke up together, I felt a desire to be with her in a deeper way. I knew she was the one after just a week. So after about 4 to 5 months, I asked her to marry me. We have been together for almost 20 years now. Story 48. For me, when I had only dated my now fiancée for about a month and she said, "I love you" first, that was huge. Felt like hanging out with a best friend. I never thought about marriage and believed it was unwise to bet half your possessions that you'll love each other forever, even though people change and evolve constantly, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then it just kept getting better and better. One day, she quoted Django Unchained, completely randomly. "All that matters is can the horse see?" That sold me. I always cited obscure or random but very specific movie lines, and no one would understand them, yet there she was doing it with me. That was probably the moment that sealed it for me. Story 49. There she was, wearing tight blue jeans while leaning over a desk. I whispered to myself that I was going to marry that woman. And I did. Now we can relax in bed together without disturbing the neighbors. Story 50. We had been friends for a couple of years before we started dating. I respected her previous relationship and waited at a distance. It was similar to a Jim and Pam situation minus all the office drama. Story 51. I quickly found myself unable to think about her absence in my life. I just wanted to spend every day with her forever. Approaching 20 years has been so good. Story 52. You instinctively understand what is important to you. It is a comfortable feeling to be around each other and to share similar senses of humor. Conversation flows easily, and you can sense that they appreciate your presence, even in silence. Communication is straightforward, and disagreements arise from differing perspectives rather than personal attacks. Story 53. We started talking after meeting through mutual friends, and it felt like we had known each other for years. There was an instant attraction that went beyond the physical. It was something I cannot fully explain. It was something I did not believe in or think existed. It has been 10 years now, and that feeling remains. I cannot imagine my life without her, nor can I picture my life before her. It felt as if I was missing a part of myself, and now I have found it. Story 54. Everything was easy and effortless from the beginning. We were both authentically ourselves with no games involved. It just didn't feel like a competition. I injured my back while waiting for her ring to be finished. I don't remember much from that hospital stay, but I recall thinking to myself that I was about to make the easiest commitment of my life due to all the care and love she showed me before, during, and after that injury. I knew that if we could make it through that easily, all things considered, life was going to be good with her. Story 55. I know it sounds cliché, but I knew the first time I saw her. My downstairs neighbor in my apartment needed me to fix her sink, so I brought my tools down and walked in. Sitting on her friend's bed was my now wife. She had a messy bun, a big sweatshirt, and pink pajama shorts. We made eye contact, smiled at each other, and I fixed the sink. Right then, I knew in my bones that this was the one. Afterwards, I introduced myself. It didn't take much more than that to start a relationship. We have been inseparable ever since. She became pregnant about a month after we first started seeing each other. It has been almost 4 years now. We have since had 2 more kids, bought a house, and embraced the whole experience. I don't know if there is a God, but if there is, he made us for each other. Story 56. When I saw her, I knew she was the one. She wasn't sure at first. I met my wife in Bangladesh. I saw her getting off the bus and chased after her, asking her name, how her day was, and where she worked. Being American in Bangladesh definitely made me stand out. After walking her home a few times, she told me she wasn't educated. She spoke English perfectly but didn't understand the structure of the language we use. After that, I gave her my contact number. We were texting a lot. She was very interested. She made food for me one day, and I told her I didn't deserve it. She replied that I had to eat something and be healthy. She told her family about me, and we went on a date with her sister since her father had passed away, and she's Muslim. A few weeks later, we got married. A lot happened within 6 months. It's been 5 years. I love her caramel skin, her Bangladeshi accent when she speaks English, and the way she cares for me even when I don't care for myself. She's always cooking for me. I never ask for a meal when I come home, and if I travel for business, she sometimes comes with me. Story 57. We aren't married yet, but I do intend to propose a year or so after I graduate from college. I knew that I loved her from our first conversation, but I didn't realize I wanted to marry her until I saw how she interacts with her family and nature. When I first met her family, I noticed the deep love she has for them. Even when she greets her mom, I can hear the affection in her voice. The same is true for her dad, sister, and especially her younger nieces, whom she babysits occasionally. The way her eyes light up and her voice becomes happier when she talks about her nieces is unlike any joy I've experienced. It's as if she is filled with love for everyone close to her and isn't afraid to share it. This was honestly the biggest green flag I've seen in my life, revealing so much about her character. Whenever she is kind or caring toward anything in life, her love is visible and beautiful. This is especially true with wildlife and nature. She's the type who saves every bug she can, shows kindness to animals, takes nature hikes, and captures the most beautiful photos of plants and animals. She openly shares her love. When there are praying mantises in her yard, she gets excited to show me where they are. When she finds a beautiful flower on the ground, she always takes a photo to share. It's as if she is filled with love and wants to spread it. And honestly, it's beautiful. Of course, she is extremely loving toward me as well, but I didn't fall in love with her only because she loves me. I fell in love with her because of how passionately she loves everything she cares about. I consider myself lucky to have met her. It's a blessing that I can call her my girlfriend. Story 58. She accepted me for who I am while still holding me to a high standard. She made me excited to build a life, something I never thought I would say. Story 59. My husband told me that he knew from our first date, which was just a movie on a very rainy evening. We moved in together 3 months later and got married 6 months after we met. We have been married for 5 years now. Story 60. I knew during the first date. We haven't been apart for more than a couple of days in 15 years since then, so it was good intuition. Story 61. She was the first woman who wanted us to get to know each other before having intimacy. Every woman I slept with before her, I met on the first date. That was fine, but it doesn't create a strong foundation for a relationship. We have been married for 25 years, and she is the best thing that has ever happened to me. Story 62. We chatted online for 20 days. Then she drove 400 kilometers just to see me. In 10 days, she quit her job and moved in with me, and I proposed to her 6 months later. She is the one because from the very first moment we were both clear about what we wanted, how we wanted to communicate and feel respected. The most common question between us is, "Are you okay with this?" Respect, boundaries, and good intentions from each other are essential. We share the same core values. The priority for both of us since day one is to make the other person feel safe, comfortable, and heard. It was and still is really easy being around each other. Story 63. We met in college. I had just finished, and she was studying abroad from Canada while I was from Ireland. We kissed at a college event that night, later started texting, and went on dates. We liked all the same things, but the moment that made me realize, I'm done. This is it, was when we sat across from each other at a table, holding hands and staring into each other's eyes in silence, smiling for what seemed like an awkward amount of time to onlookers, yet feeling completely content. Story 64. A little different here. I don't believe in the concept of the one. However, I do believe that it is rare to find a compatible match for long-term stability and love in a relationship at the same time. I knew my wife would be a good match for me within weeks of meeting her. She was pragmatic and logical, highly regarded for her work ethic, and had a well-planned side business. She did not protest or get annoyed about my work schedule or how I needed to organize my social life, which was calendar-based and always planned ahead. The only issue was that she was adamant about not wanting kids. So we became friends with benefits for years, which further proved our compatibility in my mind. Eventually, we decided to date exclusively, and she moved in within months. We got married that same year. Story 65. I proposed in 6 to 7 months. It was easy for me. I spent a long time being unmotivated. She elevated and challenged me to be a better man because she is a remarkable woman. Even though she can be difficult at times, I still love her just as much as I did then. Story 66. Blind date. Selflessly, she saw me through dark times and loved me regardless. She sees me and accepts me, and I can be my evolving self as we all are without fear. She loves me in a way that I felt throughout a very happy childhood. It's peaceful, easy, loving, and giving. Yes, the intimacy is incredible. Story 67. The fact that we became best friends quickly allowed us to talk for hours with each other, and we both made each other laugh. On top of that, we found each other incredibly attractive, and I just knew she was the one. This was 10 years ago, and we are happily married now. Story 68. I didn't know, but she was very vocal about us spending our lives together. I waited 12 years and 2 children before marrying her. Turns out she was right. I couldn't imagine my life without her, and 15 years later, she still actively wants me. Story 69. My reason isn't everyone's reason, so I'll state that up front. I had an emergency, and she was helpful during that time. Before anyone asks, the same is true for her. I once received advice to imagine what life would be like if someone just stopped being there. Not that they died, but that they were simply gone. And in her case, I truly didn't like imagining it. Story 70. I knew she was going to be the one within a few months of meeting her at work. It was love at first sight, and at that moment I realized she was the one, but I was too scared to make the first move. We remained friends for a few months, and our paths occasionally crossed at work. When we were placed in the same role later that year, we began interacting more in person almost every day. We would go out of our way to see each other, started having lunches together, and coordinated our breaks to spend time alone. She somehow obtained my phone number, texted me out of the blue, and we continued our conversations outside of work. One day, she asked me out, and 10 years later, we are happily married. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.